Took more than 2 decades of planning, an act of Congress, billion-dollar business deals for developers at Preston Harbor to get where they are now.
K10's Abby Heyman tells us about the legal hoops developers had to jump through.
Last week, we met David Craig, the CEO of Preston Harbor. But before Craig took over, one man spent the last 20 years of his life laying the groundwork for his dream. Tonight, we'll learn about George Schuler in Part 2, Blueprint for Growth, Denison's Preston Harbor.
The special place in our heart is for George Schuler and his vision and his dream, Preston Harbor.
A dream this big doesn't become reality overnight.
When I started Craig Ranch and the first acquisition in September the 21st of 2000, he started assembling what is now Preston Harbor.
George Schuler saw the untapped potential of Lake Texoma before most. In the early 2000s, the McKinney-based developer owned around 2,000 acres of land, part of the future site of Preston Harbor. But the 90,000-acre lake and surrounding shoreline were owned by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So Schuler went to work, sifting his way through red tape and logistical hurdles, alongside the city of Denison and Texas legislators, before he could even think about purchasing the waterfront land.
And that took an act of Congress and also the Texas legislation to approve it. Don't know if that'll ever happen again, but that is the case at Preston Harbor.
In 2007, Congress passed the Water Resources Development Act. That allowed the Secretary of the Army to sell land for development improvement projects. 6 years later, in March of 2013, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Texas Congressman Ralph Hall, former Denison Mayor Jared Johnson, and George Schuler signed off on the transfer of 600 acres over 9 miles of shoreline to the city of Denison. City officials paid $1.8 million for the land and then sold the property to Schuler Development, who invested over $200 million to lay the foundation.
He had a vision, he had a dream. Unfortunately, he had a double lung transplant, and your life expectancy is generally 5 years, and I think George made it 7 or maybe into his 8th year.
Schuler died in 2023, and before he passed, he turned to his friend of 40 years, David Craig.
He asked if we could fulfill his vision and his dream, and that's what we intend to do.
With a heavy heart, inspiration, and a strong foundation with Denison built over 20 years, Craig and his team watched City Council approve plans for Preston Harbor in May of 2023, just a month after Schuler's death.
We are all committed to making George's dream come true.
With City Council's approval, George Schuler's plan was no longer a dream.
We're not going to let the city down. We're not going to let George Schuler down.
Craig now had the green light to get to work and his own vision on how he could create Preston Harbor just 45 miles north of his first master planned success. You can't draw a blueprint without a model to base it off of. And to find that, we look to a place that's already transformed a city, Craig Ranch. Next time on Blueprint for Growth, Denison's Preston Harbor, the model. Reporting for K10 News, I'm Abby Heyman.